Lucas was the kind of man everyone admired. At 38, he had everything most people considered the formula for happiness: a successful career as an entrepreneur, a luxurious home in the city's most upscale neighborhood, an imported car in the garage, and a loving wife by his side. On top of that, he was respected by everyone at work, in society, and even at the church he attended occasionally. His days were filled with important meetings, social events, and trips to breathtaking destinations. Always surrounded by influential people, Lucas seemed to be at the peak of his life. But when the lights went out and the silence of the night took over, he felt a weight on his chest that he couldn't quite explain. There were moments when he found himself staring into nothing, trying to understand why, despite everything he had, something inside him still felt incomplete. He tried to brush off the feeling, telling himself it was just the exhaustion of his demanding routine or the need for a new challenge. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. People around him saw him as a model of success, yet Lucas was beginning to realize that, despite all his achievements, his life lacked meaning. What was missing? What else could he possibly attain to finally feel whole? The days went on, but that uneasiness inside Lucas seemed to grow quietly. It was as if there were an invisible hole in his chest, something he couldn't quite name. One night, after an extravagant dinner with influential friends, Lucas came home feeling more exhausted than usual. He lay down beside his wife, but sleep wouldn't come. He just stared at the ceiling, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Why am I feeling this way? He wondered. The next morning, when he arrived at work, he found an envelope on his desk. It was an invitation to an exclusive event, one of those elite gatherings reserved for top entrepreneurs. But instead of feeling excited, he just sighed. Before, something like this would have filled him with pride. Now, it just felt like another meaningless obligation. The signs were everywhere. The long-awaited trip to Europe was amazing, yet the emptiness remained when he got back. The expensive gifts he bought for his wife were appreciated, but they didn't seem to strengthen their bond. Even the smiles and pats on the back at social events felt hollow. Then, one late afternoon, as he sat in his office, gazing at the horizon through the towering glass wall, he found himself asking a terrifying question. If I have everything, why does it feel like something is still missing? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe he needed a new challenge, another achievement. What he didn't know was that he was about to embark on the most important search of his life. Enjoying the story? Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Lucas didn't like feeling this way. He had always been a practical man, someone who solved problems with action, not introspection. So, he convinced himself that this unease was simply a sign that he needed something new. His first attempt was to throw himself even deeper into work. He started expanding his business, taking on bolder and more challenging projects. If the problem was a lack of purpose, then maybe achieving something big would fix it. But even after closing million-dollar deals and watching his company grow even more, that nagging feeling remained, stubborn as ever. So, he tried a different approach: immediate pleasure. He bought a brand new luxury car, even more expensive and cutting-edge than the last one. He hosted lavish parties and elegant dinners. He traveled to exotic destinations, seeking new and thrilling experiences. But no matter how exciting each new purchase or adventure was, the satisfaction always faded, dissolving into the same old emptiness. Even his moments with his wife didn't feel the same. They used to have long conversations, laugh together, and dream about the future. Now, their talks were short and shallow, almost mechanical. One night, while dining at an upscale restaurant, she reached for his hand and asked, "Lucas, are you okay? You've been different lately." He forced a smile. "Yeah, of course. Just tired from work." But he knew it wasn't just that. Something inside him was broken, and nothing he did seemed to be enough to fix it. The truth was, Lucas had been trying to fill an empty space inside him with everything the world had to offer: success, money, status, pleasure, but that void seemed to be shaped differently. Nothing fit. And that was when life decided to take him in a new direction. One he never saw coming. It was an ordinary afternoon when Lucas decided to leave the office early. He had no specific destination, he just drove aimlessly, trying to escape the thoughts that tormented him. The city's busy streets blurred past his eyes. He wanted clarity, answers, but all he felt was a crushing inner silence. At a red light, his gaze landed on a scene by the sidewalk. An elderly man, dressed in simple, worn-out clothes, sat on a park bench. Beside him, a small cart held a few fruits and bottles of water for sale. But it wasn't the man's humble appearance that caught Lucas's attention, it was his smile. He looked calm, at peace. As he waited for customers, he observed people with an expression of gratitude, as if he saw something they didn't. Lucas was intrigued. How could someone with so little seem so complete? On impulse, he pulled over and walked up to him. "Good afternoon, sir. What are you selling?" The old man looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon, son. Today, I have some sweet apples and fresh water. Would you like to try?" Lucas bought a bottle of water, but lingered there, unsure why. The silence between them wasn't awkward. On the contrary, it felt heavy in a way Lucas couldn't explain. "Can I ask you something?" He finally broke the silence. The man nodded, still smiling. "You seem happy. But your life can't be easy. How do you manage to look so at peace?" The old man let out a soft chuckle and answered simply, "Ah, my boy. Because my happiness doesn't come from what I have on the outside, but from what I carry inside." A chill ran down Lucas's spine. He didn't know how to respond. He just stood there, letting those words sink in. Something inside him whispered that this encounter was no coincidence. That brief conversation with the man in the park stayed on Lucas's mind. For days, he found himself reflecting on those words: "My happiness doesn't come from what I have on the outside, but from what I carry inside." What did that really mean? He had always believed that happiness came from achievements, experiences, and recognition. But what if there was something beyond that? Driven by this restlessness, Lucas decided to return to the park. He found the man in the same spot, selling his fruit and water with the same peaceful expression. This time, he started a longer conversation. "You said your happiness comes from what you carry inside. But what exactly do you carry?" The old man smiled patiently. "The peace that comes from God, my son." Lucas frowned. That wasn't the answer he was expecting. He believed in God, of course. He had been raised in a religious family and even went to church occasionally. But deep down, he had never taken it very seriously. But how can that be enough? He insisted. "Don't you worry about the future? About hardships?" The man let out a quiet chuckle. "Of course, I face difficulties. But I've learned that true peace doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from knowing I am not alone. I trust in God, and that is enough for me." Lucas remained silent. He wanted to understand, but something inside him resisted. How could someone with so little trust so completely, without guarantees, without control? That night, as he lay in bed, the old man's words echoed in his mind. For the first time in a long time, he asked himself if he had been looking in the wrong place. Lucas was still trying to process that conversation, but his life continued at the same relentless pace. He couldn't just drop everything to reflect on faith or purpose. He had a business to run, commitments to keep. So, he decided it could wait. But life has a way of teaching us what truly matters, often when we least expect it. It was on an otherwise ordinary morning that everything began to fall apart. He was in his office when he received an urgent call from his lawyer. The voice on the other end was tense. "Lucas, we have a serious problem. There's an investigation into your company. Some contracts are being questioned, and there could be legal consequences." Lucas felt his blood run cold. What? He had always prided himself on being an honest businessman. But now, past decisions, made in autopilot, without much thought, were coming back to haunt him. In the days that followed, things only got worse. News reports started circulating, headlines hinted at possible irregularities. Investors began pulling away. Suddenly, the empire he had worked so hard to build was on the brink of collapse. And that was just the beginning. One evening, exhausted and overwhelmed, he came home to find his wife waiting for him in the living room. Her expression was different, sad, but also unusually firm. "We need to talk, Lucas." He sighed, bracing himself for yet another blow. "What is it?" "I don't know who you are anymore." Her voice was soft, but heavy with pain. "We've been married for years, but lately, it feels like we're living separate lives. You've become someone I don't even recognize." A tightness gripped his chest. He wanted to argue, to say it was just a difficult phase, that everything would be fine. But deep down, he knew she was right. In the days that followed, the weight of it all became unbearable. His perfect world was crumbling, and for the first time, he felt completely lost. No money, no stability, and possibly no wife. Sitting alone in his house, swallowed by the deafening silence, he thought about the man in the park. About the peace on his face. And then, with a lump in his throat, Lucas whispered to himself, "Now what? What do I do?" Desperation led Lucas back to the park. He wasn't entirely sure why he was there, but he felt an undeniable need to find the man with the peaceful smile. And, as if he had been expecting him, there he was, sitting on the same bench, his small cart of fruit beside him, watching the world around him with quiet serenity. Lucas approached, his throat tight. This time, he wasn't a successful businessman trying to understand the peace of a humble man. He was a broken man, lost, searching for something he couldn't even name. "I need to talk to you." His voice came out quieter than he intended. The old man smiled kindly. "Sit down, my son. I'm listening." Lucas sank onto the bench beside him, took a deep breath, and before he knew it, he began to pour his heart out. He spoke of the crisis in his company, the looming collapse, the growing distance from his wife, the overwhelming feeling of losing everything. And in the end, he confessed the thing that hurt the most. "I feel like I've spent my whole life building something, but now I realize I may have built it in the wrong place. I have everything, yet I've never felt so empty." The man listened in silence, never interrupting. When Lucas finally stopped, he met his eyes and said, "Sometimes, God allows everything to fall apart so we can see where we should have built from the start. A shiver ran through Lucas's body. But why? His voice trembled. Why would he let this happen? The old man smiled, but his gaze was deep and steady. Because he loves you too much to let you live an entire life without knowing the truth. You've spent years trying to fill the void with achievements, but there's only one thing that can truly fill it: God. Lucas lowered his head. Tears threatened to escape his eyes. He couldn't explain it, but those words touched something deep inside him. But I don't even know where to start. The man placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said softly, "Start by inviting God to fill that space inside you. He's been waiting all along." Lucas closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of hope. He didn't have all the answers. But maybe, just maybe, he had finally found the right path to search for them. That night, Lucas did something he hadn't done in years. He knelt beside his bed, closed his eyes, and with a trembling voice, whispered, "God, I don't know how to do this. I don't even know if I still believe. But if you're there, show me what I need to find." The house was silent, but inside him, something began to shift. It wasn't an instant miracle, nor an audible answer, but for the first time, Lucas felt a sense of relief. As if he were setting down a burden he had unknowingly carried for years. In the days that followed, he began searching. He dusted off his Bible, something he hadn't touched since his youth. He started reflecting on every word, on the stories of men who had also been lost and found. He realized his life had always been about material success, but never about something eternal. His company was still in crisis. His wife was still distant. But for the first time, Lucas felt he was on the right path. And that's when he made a decision to talk to his wife. He came home early and found her on the porch, gazing at the horizon. He approached slowly. "Can we talk?" She turned to him, hesitant. "About what?" Lucas took a deep breath. "About us. About me. About everything I've gotten wrong." She crossed her arms, waiting. "I spent my whole life chasing things I thought would make us happy. But now I realize I was building in the wrong place. I lost you little by little, and I didn't even notice. And I want to change that." There was a long silence. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, "And why would this time be any different?" Lucas met her eyes and answered, "Because this time, I'm not trying to fix everything on my own. For the first time, I'm letting God lead me." She didn't respond right away. But in her eyes, Lucas saw something he hadn't seen in a long time: hope. His transformation was only beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. That way, our stories can reach and impact even more people. Lucas's journey didn't change his life overnight, but something inside him had transformed. For the first time, he wasn't fighting alone anymore. The crisis in his company still loomed, but he began to see it differently. Instead of just trying to salvage his reputation, he focused on doing what was right. He met with his lawyers, reviewed contracts, and made tough decisions, but this time, with a different purpose: to act with integrity, not just convenience. With his wife, the path was more delicate. She was still hurt, but she noticed that Lucas had changed. He no longer tried to win her over with expensive gifts or lavish dinners. Instead, he was truly present, listening, apologizing, learning how to rebuild trust. But the greatest change was within him. One day, as he walked through the park, he saw the old man again. This time, he wasn't there to ask for answers, he was there to say thank you. You were right. I spent my whole life searching in the wrong place. The man smiled, as if he had known all along. And what did you find? Lucas took a deep breath. A peace that doesn't depend on what I have, but on who I am in God. The old man nodded. Then you finally understood. At that moment, Lucas realized something. All his life, he had believed that happiness was something to be achieved. But now he knew that true happiness came from the things money couldn't buy: faith, purpose, love. He was no longer the same man. And he never would be again. Time passed, and Lucas didn't regain everything he had lost, but for the first time, that didn't bother him. His company was smaller now, but he ran it with integrity and purpose. His relationship with his wife was still a work in progress, but love was rekindling with every sincere effort. He had learned that life wasn't about control, it was about trust. And above all, Lucas had finally found what he had always been missing: peace. One day, as he walked through the park, he saw a reflection of his former self, a well-dressed man pacing back and forth, speaking impatiently on the phone. Lucas smiled, remembering who he once was and who he had become. Now, he understood something that once seemed impossible: everything the world offers is temporary, but what comes from God is eternal. He once had everything, yet something was missing. Now, he needed nothing more to feel whole. And that was the greatest wealth he could ever have. This story reminds us that no matter how much success, wealth, or recognition we achieve, nothing can fill the emptiness of a life without purpose. Only when we find God do we discover true fulfillment. What about you? Have you ever felt like you had everything, yet something was still missing? Share your experience in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If this story touched your heart, like and share it with someone who needs to hear this. God has a purpose for each of us. God bless you, and see you in the next video.